Today we're going to be taking a look at converting your Shimano cranks from a 2x to a 1x. We're working on my 2014 Giant Trans 1, but this applies to any bike that uses Shimano HollowTech II cranks, which are most of the modern Shimano cranks with a hole in the center. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So to this you're going to need the narrow wide chainring of your choice. I personally went with a race face 36 teeth. Depending on where you ride, you're going to have to be able to choose how many teeth you need. 36 is great for a place like Florida. If you do a lot of climbing, I would say 32 is a good base, but it's really something that you have to figure out on your own. The only specialty tool that we need is the BBT 10.2, and that's just to remove the center cap on the crank arms. In addition to that, you need some form of grease. I like the PPL1 from Park Tool. And you need a rubber mallet, a socket wrench, a T30 Torx, a 5mm Allen, a 4mm Allen, and depending on your chain, you may need a chain tool if you're going to actually have to break it. I would recommend doing this with a new chain. It's better, and you may need a missing link. The first thing you have to do is remove the chain. You should check the chain for a missing link type connector. If you have a chain that has all links like these, you actually have to use a chain tool. I'll place a link to someone using the tool for reference, as I won't be using one in this video. If your chain has a missing link type connector, you can just remove it. I was originally going to use a new chain for this, but I was sent the wrong one, so we will be reusing the chain. I am going to save the missing link type connector and use it again. To remove the missing link connector, you should grab it by both sides and push the right side left and the left side right, basically inward on the pins. This will cause the pins to slide into the bigger opening and you can just pull them out. I don't actually have a work stand, so we're going to be using the trail dock on my bike rack. It's not perfect, but it works well for things like this. I'm going to loosen the chainring while it's still there just because it makes it a little easier as the bike provides support. The chainring should be loose but still held in place. So what you have to do next is remove this center cap here, this bolt, and this bolt. This will let you pull off the crank. Once you've gotten all this out, you can tap it with a mallet and the crank will come out the other side. So these aren't very tight. When you reinstall them, take that into account. The crank arm says to use around 14 Newton meters. That's really not much. If you can notice, there is no side-to-side free play on the crank. We're pulling on that, and it's just staying fit. You're going to want to achieve the same feel when you reinstall, so take a moment to feel the cranks. Now we're going to remove the cap. This is the only specialty tool that we need, which is a Park Tool BBT 10.2. They go for around $15, which I think is very much worth it. Trying to use makeshift tools for this is a bad idea. Now you'll notice that there's a little bit of side-to-side play after we've removed that. That's what we want to avoid when we reinstall. Now notice how lightly tightened it was. You're going to want to be able to achieve the same thing. Now you're going to use this little point here to actually go into the cranks and lift the little plate up. That's why that's there. Once it's off, you can just basically pull it out and pull the whole crank off. With the crank arm out of the way, grab your rubber mallet and tap a couple of times. It doesn't really take much force, just enough so that it comes out the other side. Now grab the crank arm on the other side and pull straight out. With that, you've removed the cranks from the bottom bracket. So now you're going to want to go ahead and remove the 4 bolts. You're going to have to hold the ones from the outer plate on the inside to hold the nut just so that the thing comes out. And once the outer one is out, it's just kind of be floating there. So after that, go to the inside, and they're going to be a little bit hard, but you can just use the wrench to loosen them up. Once that's done and you've got all of the bolts out, you can just pull it out. That's a crank arm all by itself. Now save all the bolts and all the nuts because you're going to be reusing them. Now here you can totally notice why I'm doing this. The smaller, the 24 tooth is basically brand new, and the 38 tooth that I had on the outside is very spent. You can see the difference in the teeth. So now that the crank arms are off, it's a good idea to go ahead and clean everything. Grab a shop towel, and you can usually use your fingernail to kind of lodge onto the edge of the plastic and spin the bearing on the outside, and that'll make all the grime and dirt stick to the shop towel. Since we're using an narrow wide chain ring and my derailleur has a clutch, we're going to go ahead and remove the chain guide. This chain guide in particular uses sprockets, so that's going to be an issue because the chain line might not line up straight in there depending on the final position of the actual chain ring when it's finally installed. To remove the chain guide, grab your 4mm Allen bit and remove all 3 bolts. You'll notice that the chain guide is actually quite heavy, so getting this out of the way will actually save some weight on the bicycle. After you've gotten them out, make sure to clean out all the dirt behind the chain guide. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove the front derailleur. So get the bolt that holds the cable in position out. That's the first thing to do. And then after that, you can take the bolt out that holds the derailleur to the frame. I'm going to go ahead and save this bolt because I might be placing a little cover plate there eventually. I don't have one right now, but I'll do it at one point. And then remove the jack wire to the end of the cable, and it's held by a zip tie, so just kind of thread it back and then through it again so that the zip ties out. With that out of the way, you can actually push it through the cable housing. Now the next step is to actually remove the shifter from the handlebar, and you're just going to grab the 7mm and remove that bolt that's there. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but you can just remove that. So once the shifter is out, you can just pull the whole cable out. In this case, this is internally routed, so you just have to pull it out. If you have an external routing, you're going to have to cut a couple of zip ties along the frame to get the cable out of the way. So we're finally done removing stuff, and now it's time to put the chain ring back onto the cranks. So what you're going to do is take the old bolts and reuse them and hand tighten as much as you can. Remember to go in a star pattern so that everything has the same torque. We're going to tighten them properly at the end once they're already on the bicycle. Take the assembled crank arm and use some of the grease that we mentioned before. You don't have to put too much on it, just make sure that there is sufficient amount on it, specifically in the area where the bearings are going to be in contact. So this might sound obvious, but make sure that you're actually putting on the side that has the chain, because you can actually go the other way around if you're not paying attention. Don't ask me how I know. So it should just go on like that with not much trouble, but if you do have any issues, you can grab the rubber mallet and tap it a couple of times until it goes in. Grab your center cap and the crank arm. Now you're going to want to place the cranks 180 degrees one to the other. I do this by placing the crank on the other side vertically up and then the one on my hand vertically down. Once you've inserted it, grab the center cap and hand tighten it. Now take your BBT 10.2, insert it, and tighten just enough to eliminate all side play. Be very careful not to over tighten it. It's very easy to do. If you do over tighten, you're going to be putting stress on the bearings, and that's going to cause premature wear. The next step is to tighten the pinch bolts on the crank arm. These only need about 14 Newton meters or 10 feet-pound. If you have a torque wrench, it's better to use it. If you don't, just take into account that they don't need too much torque. Tighten the pinch bolts by alternating between both of them. This helps to ensure that the pressure is equal on both. Now that the cranks are installed on the bottom bracket, finish tightening the chainring. Do so in a star pattern. The cranks should spin freely without any side play. We're almost done. Now we have to install the chain. Place it on the cassette and behind the chainring. Now you have to route the chain through the derailleur cage. It goes up and around the upper sprocket, then in through the cage, and then around that sprocket in the end. It's a little bit confusing at first if you've never done it, but once you've done it a couple of times, you'll get the hang of it. Take your quick link and separate it into two pieces. Insert one on one side of the chain with the pin, the other one on the other side. Now you're going to want to line up the larger holes by pulling on the chain, and once they are lined up and you have them in, you pull outwards, and that will close the quick link. Last step is to put the chain on and test everything. Put the chain on the chain ring, and on the cassette put it close to what you think the selected gear is. Once you've done that, and I forgot to do it on the video, remember to turn the clutch on the derailleur as well. Go ahead and test everything by spinning the cranks and jumping through a few gears. You should be able to change gears in both directions without any issues. Make sure you notice no weird noises or free play in any of the components. If everything looks okay, you're done. Go out and enjoy your simplified bike. I hope this video helped you out to do the installation. If you have any questions, post them up in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. As a side note, I went ahead and weighed everything. The 36 tooth race face came in at 49 grams. Everything we removed was 498 grams. At 449 grams difference, we roughly removed a full pound from the bike just doing that. Not bad for a $50 mod. If you're new around here, go check out some of the other videos on the channel. I mostly ride around Florida and film the trails I like the most. It's my first attempt at a tutorial. I see this is a commonly asked question on Reddit, and I was going to do the conversion on mine, so I went ahead and recorded it. I'll see you for the next video when we'll be back on the bike instead of working on it. Happy riding!